56-year-old Graham Linehan has been officially charged with both harassment and criminal damage regarding an incident in which he targeted a 17-year-old trans girl who was out protesting in defense of her rights. We covered this story when it first came to light in October of 2024. I remember stating that I had little confidence that Linehan would face any repercussions for his actions, yet here we are, possibly seeing the beginnings of some actual accountability. It's certainly a very dramatic update to a previous story, and I just want to discuss what we know, the limitations, and why it's so important to talk about this. But first, a quick content warning for the following: transphobia, misgendering, sexual harassment, stalking, doxing, physical assault, and threats of legal violence. If our work has helped you, please consider supporting us via Patreon so that we can keep the channel running. We cannot survive without your support. You can also help us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. I'd also just like to take this time to remind our viewers that the statements made throughout our videos are the opinions of myself, the host, based on the evidence I have available to me. They are not and should not be taken as unquestionable fact, which is why we reference everything, because we're fallible. Thus we strive to give you, the viewer, the ability to check all evidence yourself in order to make up your own mind, which is what the reference numbers in the top left corner are for, being numbers that match up with the reference list found in the transcript linked down below. As such, we encourage all viewers to do their own research to reach an informed conclusion about the topic. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and we need to talk about Graham Linehan finally being charged for at least some of the hate he's targeted at the trans community. Again, this is a story we covered in some detail in our video published all the way back on the 30th of October 2024, titled Graham Linehan Sexually Harassed and Assaulted a 17-year-old Trans Teen. In that video, we laid out the facts that Linehan has a prior history of just horrifically disgusting and abusive behavior targeting trans people, including publishing photos of a trans man's genitals shortly after surgery without consent in order to try and cultivate a disgust response in his audience. We then link this to the wider gender-critical community, which routinely sexualizes trans minors, specifically trans boys and AFAB MB folk, as seen in this horrific clip taken from an official talk hosted by the LGBT Alliance.
Up and down the country and around the world, girls are removing breasts that have never known a lover's caress.
The LGBT Alliance is an AstroTurf front comprised primarily of alisexet people, LARPing as lesbian, gay and bisexual people, with a few tokens sprinkled in order to handwave criticism of their anti-LGBT+ bigotry. Because no, they're not just bigoted against trans people, they routinely target the bisexual community, and one of their founders even promoted the narrative that LGBT+ support groups in schools encouraged, and I do quote, predatory gay teachers, end quote. No real gay advocacy group would attempt to paint basic support for LGBT youth who desperately need it as a source of predatory behavior, and only a liar would claim otherwise. This is the very same LGBT Alliance that was later protested by a group of trans kids known as Trans Kids Deserve Better, who were founded in defense of their human rights after the UK government banned puberty blockers on the NHS. The UK government largely did this at the behest of hate groups like the LGBT Alliance and their predatory and bigoted members, hence they were protested. And when I say in defense of their human rights, I specifically mean 1. The right to bodily autonomy, 2. The right to health and healthcare, 3. The right to information, 4. The right to non-discrimination and equality, 5. The right to be free from cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment, 6. The right to privacy, 7. The right to security of person, 8. The right to liberty, 9. The right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress, and 10. The right to life, all of which are violated via the current puberty blocker ban. said kid released live crickets into the hall at one of the LGBT Alliance's conferences, shutting it down and gaining national attention for said non-violent protest, bringing massive attention to their plight, whilst proving that trans youth are not mindless drones, void of autonomy. This seemed to absolutely infuriate Linehan, who made it his personal mission to track down and dox every child involved in said political action, including Sophia, the girl he targeted at the Battle of Ideas Festival on the 19th of October 2024. I'm just going to play you the video recorded by Sophia to show exactly what Linehan said to her. Again, a literal 17-year-old.
Graham,
disgusting.
You're disgusting,
little
Graham. You're divorced.
Sissy porn watching scumbag.
And you're calling me the groomer
There
when
you
you're
go, mate.
assuming.
See you soon.
Bye, Graham.
So, we have Graham Linehan, a 56-year-old man, attempting to sexually degrade a 17-year-old trans girl. And just to be clear, Linehan confirmed that he knew Sophia was a minor, referring to her as a quote-unquote psycho posh kid, before explicitly stating that he knows she's 17 in another post, as he continued to attack her online. So ignorance is not an excuse here. Which is important, seeing how this fits the definition of sexual harassment as laid out by Rape Crisis England and Wales, in that it is verbal abuse designed to sexually degrade his victim, with that victim being a trans child. And whilst all sexual harassment is wrong, even if the victim is an adult, the fact that Linehan only goes after children or people he thinks can't fight back is very telling. Just like the way he quickly ran away the moment Sophia called him out on his hypocrisy in labeling her a groomer, whilst he was sexually degrading a 17-year-old in public. This, to me, demonstrates a level of awareness in his actions. Sadly, things only got worse, as seen when Linehan took to Twitter, boasting that, quote, "I'm quite proud that I grabbed his phone and threw it across the road. He was furious," end quote, misgendering Sophia whilst also confessing that, at some point, Linehan returned to her and grabbed her mobile before throwing it against the ground. This reads as a failed attempt to destroy the previously shown evidence, again, strongly implying that Linehan knows that what he did was wrong and even illegal. Which brings us back to today's article, which reads as, quote, "Father Ted co-creator Graham Linehan has been charged with criminal damage and harassment without violence offences. The 56-year-old is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court over the accusations next month. It is understood they relate to an alleged incident at a festival named Battle of Ideas on October 19th, 2024. After being contacted by the Mirror, Mr. Linehan today issued a statement claiming, "This is part of a long history of the police acting as a goon squad for trans rights activists." In the statement, which he also posted on social media, the 5-time BAFTA award winner also made a number of allegations about the alleged victim in the case and added, "I look forward to exposing him and them in court." As well as Father Ted, Mr. Linehan also wrote hit TV shows The IT Crowd and Black Books, but he has become best known as a vocal critic of the trans rights movement in recent years. He has previously claimed that his career and marriage have been destroyed over his gender-critical views. Linehan, who was born in Dublin and survived cancer in 2018, has also said he has lost his career, family, and friends after getting caught up in the trans debate. He has won a Lifetime Achievement Award and penned a memoir, Tough Crowd, How I Made and Lost a Career in Comedy, which was published in October 2023 and reached number 10 on the Sunday Times bestseller list. A Crown Prosecution Service spokesperson said, "Graham Linehan is due to appear at Westminster Magistrate Court for a first hearing to face charges of harassment without violence and criminal damage on 12th May. End quote. So, a very short article, half of which is spent blowing smoke up Linehan's arse, meaning there's not really all that much to unpack here. Something I'd just like to note before I continue, I am not a lawyer, I am speaking as a layman. Just be aware of that. First thing to point out is the gross trivialization of what Linehan did, specifically the charge of harassment without violence. Graham Linehan assaulted this child. That is the extent of which he admitted on Twitter, at least in my eyes. As far as I understand, assault constitutes any behavior which could lead the victim to reasonably expect physical violence is about to occur, such as someone who had previously sexually harassed the victim, rushing them to grab their phone. If Linehan had thrown fists, that would be assault with battery, so I understand not charging to that severity on the basis of this post alone. We don't know if he laid hands on Sophia or just grabbed her phone. Either way, assault is violence, arguably making his actions harassment with violence. That's why a part of me feels that the Crown Prosecution Service has let Sophia down by charging Linehan with harassment without violence, a sentiment that seems to be shared by a few of you when I posted about the incident to Blue Sky and on our Discord server. That said, one possible reason for this might be Sophia's lack of involvement. Nowhere has it been stated that the victim herself is involved in the proceedings, and whilst it is rare for a case to make it to court without the victim testifying, the UK courts can set a trial without the victim. The deciding factor is usually whether the courts think there is sufficient evidence to sentence someone without victim testimony, which, considering Linehan confessed to the criminal damages and his sexual harassment was caught on video, could very well be the case. And if that is the reasoning, I can sort of understand it, even if it does feel dirty. To prove assault without battery would usually involve Sophia testifying to her being afraid of physical violence, meaning that, without the victim, it's difficult to do that. I can make the argument that someone who had just sexually harassed the victim rushing them to grab their phone is likely to cause that, but I don't know how well that will stand up in actual court. Yet, if that is the case, Linehan's absolutely fucked, even if he doesn't realise it. Again, courts very rarely charge without the victim testifying, only really doing so when they think the evidence is so strong that they have a good shot of actually convicting on just that. So the idea that Linehan is going to be doing any sort of exposing in a controlled environment where he can't just delete what he said and run back to his equally ghoulish followers is frankly laughable. Another thing worth pointing out is that whilst what Linehan targeted Sophia with was sexual harassment, and sexual harassment is absolutely violence within any just legal system, only certain forms of sexual harassment are actually crimes in the UK, namely stalking, indecent exposure, upskirting, and sexual harassment involving physical contact, which, again, we don't know if Linehan actually touched Sophia or just her phone. Sexual harassment within places protected by the Equalities Act, such as at work, on transport, or in schools, colleges, and universities, is also prohibited, but I do believe that is a civil rather than criminal matter under UK law. I know it's disgusting and horrific, but sadly the law is well and truly fucked that way, meaning predators like Linehan get lesser sentences for their crimes as a result. That's why it's little more than mirror propaganda for Linehan to pretend like the UK's legal system operates at the behest of the trans community. If it did, he would already be on a sex offender register for previously publishing a trans person's genitals without their consent, something I personally reported him to both the UK and Irish police over, and we wouldn't have seen a 1,282% increase in anti-trans hate incidents between 2012 and 2022. This doesn't mean you can't call out his sexual harassment for what it is, especially now that you can give this additional context. This is merely me offering possible reasons for why the courts have settled on going after a lesser crime, though again, I am not a lawyer. I am, however, someone Linehan threatened with a defamation lawsuit back in 2020, leading us to raise money to fight him in court, at which point he deleted his legal threat and ran away. Just, once again, really showing how the notion that he's going to expose anyone is the funniest joke he has ever written. Though I would just like to go on record telling Patrick Hill, the author of the Mirror article, to go fuck himself for even attempting to salvage some of Linehan's image by bringing up his supposed achievements as if they have any fucking relevance to the fact that he sexually harassed a 17-year-old on camera. This is precisely why sexual predators like Linehan rarely face any consequences for their actions, because institutions, such as the mainstream press, are constantly running defense for them. Things don't get any better when we take a look at Linehan's official statement, in which he asserted, quote, "The Daily Mirror has picked up on the story that the police are now trying to charge me for defending myself against a deranged and dangerous trans activist. Here is the statement I gave them because I have a feeling they won't publish it. The activist, known to me as Tarquin, spent a weekend harassing attendees at last year's Battle of Ideas conference, which I attended. After a day of this, I threw his phone away to prevent him from harassing others. He is receiving legal advice from convicted sex offender Stephanie Hayden, who has been harassing me for years. I believe Tarquin was briefly arrested himself for his campaigns against gender-critical campaigners, and despite a 400-page evidence file provided by myself and several other of his victims, the police decided on no further action. This is part of a long history of the police acting as a goon squad for trans rights activists, and I look forward to exposing him and them in court." End quote. Except, we all watched the video in which it was Linehan approaching Sophia in order to sexually harass her. And notice he himself did so while showing his phone, presumably recording her. So this begs the question, what exactly was he defending himself from? If it was Sophia recording him and his fascist gang, he himself is guilty of that very same thing. Only it's Sophia who has actually published a video demonstrating what Linehan actually did, providing actual evidence, something Linehan hasn't. As for the statement, it barely merits any form of discussion. Linehan just repeats accusations contradicted by the video footage, whilst bringing up a completely different person, accusing that person of being a convicted sex offender, as if that has any relevance in his sexual harassment of a 17-year-old girl, as recorded on video. Like, everything he says about everyone else, such as Hayden or the police, could be true, yet that still wouldn't justify Linehan's sexual violence. If this is the angle he intends to go with in court, he is going to get absolutely massacred. That's all I really have to say on that. Though, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the case? How do you feel about these specific charges made against Linehan? What's the best outcome we can hope for? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help keep us running, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal or Super Thanks on YouTube. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Flynn, and Higgins the Seagull. And from myself, Adita, and Levi, take care now.